No, whatever you're comfortable with. You can wait till they order, or you can start reading, and it's all good. It might take them a while.
Alright, so I normally don't do essays, but I figured that for tonight we have a lot of really great fiction, so maybe I should switch it up a little bit. It starts with a Harley. Because I am a biker stereotype. No, this is an essay. It's called New Leaf. Shortly before the millennium, I began dreaming in blue and gray. Blue being the carpet of the third floor where I worked, gray being the upholstery on the cubicle where I sat, crunching numbers and correlating spreadsheets, adjusting the headset that curled around my ear like a parasitic apostrophe, helping customers for 40 to 60 hours a week. There were maybe 40 or 50 of us at a time, all grouped in these tiny pods, spread out across the floor. There were no fixtures and few walls, just the endless sea of pale, dingy blue. We were expected to take a certain number of calls a day, so on one hand you could never really relax, never go through the motions, but you also couldn't spend too much time with any one person. If anyone needed more than 5 minutes of help, you'd have to start weighing the consequences of passing the buck versus the consequences of underperforming. Like a true bureaucracy, it was the worst of both worlds. Though raised in the church, I had recently crossed the threshold from someone who read about Eastern religion to someone trying to practice them. I sat in meditation for hours at night, legs folded in full lotus, something my knees have never really forgiven me for. I devoured anything written by Krishnamurti, I counted my breathing, and I looked for meaning in my life, which was not very easy. Life was mostly work, and work was beyond parody. There was no skit, no movie, no sitcom that could lampoon the actual banality of the office. There was no caricature that could be more of an expendable drum than it was. When it became obvious that I was being groomed for a promotion, that being a 5% pay raise and twice the responsibilities, I sold my stuff, threw what was left in the car, drove across the country, and started a new life. I got a job at a homeless shelter. This was work that mattered. Work that Jesus and Buddha would have approved of, feeding the hungry, offering shelter from the storm. The hours were long, and twice a week I worked an overnight shift, but I embraced the chance to do something that felt real. Now here's the thing about homelessness in America. Anything you want to believe is sometimes true and often false. If you think people who are homeless are victims who just need a second chance, just need a little help to get back on their feet, sometimes you're right. If you think that guy in the corner made his own bed, or lack thereof, and should just take responsibility for his life, and for God's sakes, get a job, you're mostly wrong, but sometimes you're a little bit right. Most of the clients hover at the limbo between the two extremes of the hurtful stereotype and the romanticized notion of the poor and downtrodden, a swirl of bad situations and bad choices, the two often feeding on each other, just as someone who wrestles with their mental health might self-medicate with alcohol and drugs, just as someone using those drugs and alcohol will eventually damage their psyche, if not their neurology. For staff working at a shelter, the game is rigged. Most of the clients needing services don't look like the stereotypical homeless person. They go to work, they take classes, they obey the rules and just want a meal and some sleep before getting up and going back to do whatever they need to do to get back on their feet. The catch being, these are the folks that leave, sometimes after a couple months, sometimes after a day or two. You forget their names as quickly as you fill their bed. Seldom causing a scene, they rarely insert themselves into your overcrowded thoughts. They simply don't leave a mark. For the minority, whom you'll often hear described as the chronic homeless, these are your characters. They start the fights and make the threats, shamble through the hallways, mumbling to themselves, push back on any rule, overdose in the bathroom stalls, scale the fences. They take up most of your time and all of your energy, and as they come around month after month and year after year, they start to become the only thing that you see. Within months, I had mopped every kind of mess you never want to think about. Twice I had to bag and toss my clothing after finishing a shift. We built a twisted sort of street credibility on our close calls, the CPR frantically performed on someone choking on their own vomit, having a guy rough me up in the parking lot, talking down a man who expressed his frustration by pulling a knife, not a pocket knife, not a kitchen knife, but the sort of biking utensil you'd expect to see tucked in a loincloth. A co-worker asking me how did I manage to de-escalate him. I had no memory of anything I said, and I still don't. Early on, a staff veteran named Angie took me under her wing, showed me the ropes, kept me from screwing up too much. She drove me to get stitches when, rushing to break up a fight, I slammed the gate on my own hand, shearing off the thumbnail. She ended up being my supervisor, and over time she was also a mentor and a good friend. Working at the shelter may have met the need I had to believe that I was doing something worthwhile, but it did not meet the need to pay my bills, particularly the student loans, whose representatives seemed to grow more aggressive every month. I paid what I could, but I always knew that I was one payment away from receiving that ominous phone call. "Not good, Mr. Brown. Next time we take a finger." During my second year, I took a second job as part of a mental health team. The team leader explained that the client, whom I'll call Amy, because her name was Amy, did not suffer from acute schizophrenia. She lived with acute schizophrenia and also a handful of anxiety disorders. I'm pretty sure suffering was accurate. On the nights I worked, I gathered a mishmash of colorful pills in a Dixie cup as if she were doing shots of M&Ms. I listened to her explain what voices were saying, what she saw climbing on the walls, and the various animals that she saw floating through the air. Amy fell prey to an all too common trap, that being the belief that her illness was actually caused by the medications prescribed to treat her condition. Her psychiatrist had warned me that this had happened before, that if she ever went off her meds, I'd have between 24 and 48 hours before she was fully psychotic. I assumed this was an exaggeration. One day I walked in with Amy's groceries. She leapt from the couch, howling like a banshee and sprinting faster than I ever dreamed she could move. I had just enough time to get my hands in front of my face, at which point she kicked me in the crotch with such force I expected my genitals to come rocketing up through my esophagus, sailing across the room, hopefully caught by one of her floating animals. In the aftermath of what was called the field goal, Amy's shrink explained that she had started to believe her ex-husband, whom she hated, had become a shapeshifter, and that he often took my form to sneak around the house. Sure, no problem. I'm not sure what the appropriate response to a statement like that is, but I don't think I gave it, and I'm definitely sure that it didn't involve the words that I used. My new life mission was not going as planned. I seldom slept well and had purple crescent moons permanently etched under my eyes. I had developed an assortment of minor tics, sometimes an eye twitch, but more often one index finger that trembled of its own accord. Co-workers speculated that for every one person we helped, we enabled two. I began to wonder if we were part of the problem, and I began to wonder if social work was not, in fact, my life's calling. FYI, if you ever ride the bus with an ice pack in your pants, people are just going to think that you're wearing a diaper.